Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, November 12th. I'm Laura Cornfield, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. The war of words between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas continues, with each pointing a finger of blame at the other for fomenting the escalating violence. Here with more is Eli Walgalanter.
Prime Minister Netanyahu announced a series of new steps last night to combat the wave of Arab violence, including punitive measures against the parents of minors involved in clashes. Netanyahu announced that the new measures include the reinforcement of security personnel on the ground across the country, the demolition of assailants' homes, harsher punishment for those who throw stones, Molotov cocktails, firecrackers, and petrol bombs, fining the parents of stone-throwing children and youths, and outlawing Arabs who incite in Jerusalem. In a nationally televised broadcast following consultations with the heads of security, Netanyahu also said that PA Authority President Mahmoud Abbas was contributing to the anger on the Arab street and was not a partner in the effort against the incitement. He has proven how irresponsible he is. Instead of calming tensions, he stokes them, Netanyahu said. Instead of telling the truth, he is spreading lies that we are attempting to change the status of holy sites. Instead of educating his people on peace, he is teaching them terror. Netanyahu was responding to remarks made earlier in the day by Abbas, in which the Palestinian president accused Israel of dragging the region into a religious war. Speaking at a rally in Ramallah marking the 10th anniversary of former President and Fatah leader Yasser Arafat's death, Abbas vowed that the Palestinians would never agree to Jewish prayer on the Temple Mount. Israel's leaders are making a huge mistake if they think they can now establish facts on the ground and divide prayer times at the Al-Aqsa Mosque as they did in Hebron at the Cave of the Patriarchs, he said. By doing these things, they are leading the region and the world into a devastating religious war. And he called on Israel to keep settlers and extremists far away from Al-Aqsa Mosque and our holy places. Abbas also accused his Islamist Hamas rivals of carrying out a series of bombings on his Fatah loyalists in Gaza last week. A series of small explosions targeted the homes and vehicles of officials from Abbas's Fatah movement on Friday, causing minor damage but no injuries. And Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon also blamed the Palestinian Authority and Hamas for the recent surge of violence.
This is a result of incitement, I believe, starting with education. But nowadays, the incitement generated by those who claim that we are challenging the status quo in the Temple Mount, which is a lie. It's actually manipulation and propaganda. And for this incitement, a couple of elements were responsible. Several Islamic movements, to include Hamas, and unfortunately even the Palestinian Authority, led by Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen, is responsible for this propaganda, false propaganda. And as we see, it's become a phenomenon. Terrorists, not organized, without any organization behind them, decide to go either to use their cars to kill the Israelis or to use knives to stab Israelis. And this is a wave of violence in which we are engaged now. That's why we decided to deploy more troops here in the region and of course to try to meet the challenge in a way that will calm the situation as soon as possible.
Ya'alon added that it was too soon to tell whether the surge in violence would lead to another intifada. Laura?
Thank you, Eli. Police are investigating an arson attack on a mosque in a West Bank village early this morning. Before dawn, unknown assailants set fire to a mosque in Moriah, north of Ramallah, in what appears to be a price tag attack. The village mayor said locals and firefighters tried to extinguish the flames that destroyed the first floor of the building, damaging carpets and prayer books. Disturbances that erupted in the village at first prevented police and IDF soldiers from probing the incident. Unlike previous price tag incidents, no Hebrew graffiti was scrawled on the walls. The Jerusalem Magistrates Court extended the remand by 5 days of a border policeman arrested on suspicion of shooting dead a Palestinian teen at a Nakba protest outside Ramallah in May. Details of the police investigation remain under gag order, but there have been a number of reports indicating that the officer fired a live round rather than a rubber bullet, as the army had claimed. The attorney for the accused said that the policeman denies that he shot the victims. An autopsy by Palestinian and Israeli pathologists in June found that 17-year-old Nadim Siam Nawara was most likely killed by a live round fired by a soldier. The Army is withholding comment at this time. Joining us now in the studio is Hebrew University Palestinian Affairs expert, Professor Menachem Klein. Professor Klein, always good to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Laura.
The leaders of Israel and the Palestinians are currently adding to the tensions. Abu Mazen says that Israel is leading the region and the world into a devastating war, and Prime Minister Netanyahu says that Abbas is spreading lies and preaching terror rather than peace. How can tensions be calmed when the leaders are really at each other's throats?
There is no trust between the two leaders, and there is no mediator running in between. So first, there is a need to find a mediator. Those sides should apply for a mediator, or mediator should take the risk and jump in. But it seems that nobody is enthusiastic to take this job upon himself after Kerry's failure. So it's, the tension is there, the conflict is there, and then the issue is the agenda. At the moment, the conflict is an ethnic conflict, ethno-national, perhaps motivated by religious claims, but it is an ethnic conflict spread all over the territory from Jordan to the Mediterranean. No border between, no negotiations on border. So the main issue is to open negotiations on a border. And then you know that each side knows where its sovereignty once will end. And this is the way, the first step to calm down the conflict. Otherwise, we are doomed to be in ethnic conflict over all mandatory Palestine.
Professor Klein, how much of an effect have the events, some say changes in the status quo on the Temple Mount, had in stirring up the violent attacks in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and the West Bank?
This is number one. But beyond it, there are many other causes that created this tension and this conflict. And first and foremost, the collapse of the peace talks between Israelis and Palestinians, Kerry Mission, which was the last one. If there is no border, if there is no border between Israelis and Palestinians, even not negotiations, not in the horizon, not our talks about the talks, neither a mediator that runs and tries to open talks about talks and preconditions are exchanged between the sides, the result is that every single Israeli, every single Palestinian is involved in the conflict. Perhaps he or she are targets to attack. The collectives stand one against the other. So the mosques, synagogues, individuals crossing Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, roads, all of them become involved in the conflict. This is a very bad situation that can escalate. But unless there is a mediator and unless the side decide, okay, we negotiate over borders here.
Is there anyone who can step in and take that position? Anyone in the world who could possibly bring these two leaders and the two nations back to the negotiating table?
America first and foremost, and then the Europeans. They should intervene, in my view, and stop the sides confronting each other. Otherwise, especially regarding Europe, the Israelis and Palestinians will once again export their conflict into West European capitals.
Professor, is it possible that Abbas is simply not interested in peace and that Netanyahu is really not interested in a two-state solution? And if that's the case, aren't we doomed to increase violence until we get new leadership?
Maybe we have to wait to a new leadership in order to find sides that can agree on. But the description that you just put on the table is not accurate in my view, because Abbas is interested in negotiating over borders. Netanyahu put previously, during Kerry mission, put preconditions to any negotiations and refused to put on the table a map. The main problem, as I see it, that there is no border between the sides. So therefore, the conflict spreads all over the area. Border is very important. So even if Netanyahu says, I would like to have the border, let's say in the Jordan Valley, this is a kind of an advancement because the sides know something that they can hold on and negotiate.
Professor Menachem Klein, it was great to have you with us.
Thanks so much.
There's been a marked improvement in the condition of Rabbi Yehuda Glick. Glick was gunned down by a Palestinian terrorist 2 weeks ago outside the Menachem Begin Heritage Center in Jerusalem. Knesset Speaker Yuli Edelstein, who is a personal friend, told the plenum yesterday that Glick has regained consciousness and was breathing on his own. Today, doctors at the Sharei Tzedek Hospital in the capital confirmed that the Temple Mount activist is communicating freely and will not need to undergo any further surgeries except on a wounded hand. Intelligence gathering and international inspectors cannot ensure that Iran's nuclear program is used only for peaceful purposes. That's the view of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who told the Jewish Federations of North America via satellite that a bad deal with Iran would be a mistake of historic proportions.
My friends, it's obvious that Iran wants to remove the sanctions that have had such a devastating impact on its economy. But it should be equally obvious that Iran is not prepared to dismantle its nuclear weapons program in return. Unfortunately, instead of holding firm and demanding that Iran dismantle its program, the international community is reportedly, and I hope these reports do not prove to be true, but the international community is reportedly willing to leave Iran's nuclear program largely intact. They hope to rely on intelligence and inspectors to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. I believe this would be a bad deal and a huge mistake. We must recognize the limitations of our own intelligence gathering capabilities. Remember, for years, both Israel's intelligence and U.S. intelligence failed to discover Iran's secret enrichment facilities at Natanz and Qom. And given that record, there's no reason to believe that our intelligence facilities will be perfect in the future.
Speaking on the sidelines of the six-party talks on Iran's nuclear program, the Russian representative was upbeat about chances of an agreement being reached by the November 24th deadline.
Very ready to progress with our Iranian friends in this area. And I think as we approach November 24th and as we hopefully achieve an agreement there, we will be right in time to consider what is possible there. We are working hard. Russia nationally has done a lot to facilitate progress. Russia is very interested in achieving this agreement, and very wrong are those who believe that for whatever reasons, because of our complications with the West, with the US, we are now less interested in this agreement. This is not true. We are fully committed and we are working towards this end.
Back here at home, a harsh punishment was dealt to the two Tel Aviv soccer clubs in the Premier League after the Israel Football Association's disciplinary court docked each side 2 points for its role in a decision to abandon the derby at Bloomfield Stadium last week. The decision came following the attack of Maccabi player Eran Zahavi by a fan of the rival team and the ensuing mayhem on the field. In addition to the points deducted, neither will be awarded a point for the match. To further add to the blow, the sections of the stadium occupied by the team's hardcore fans will be closed for each team's next 4 home matches. As a result of the penalty, Maccabi dropped 1 place to 3rd and Hapoel fell to 5th. Both teams are expected to appeal the verdict. The YPG Kurdish militia in Syria has taken on its first female volunteer to fight the Islamic State, and she is an Israeli-Canadian citizen, Gila Rosenberg. A former IDF soldier, Rosenberg has also spent time in a U.S. prison, as we hear in this report from Alex Jen.
Gil Rosenberg, known to friends in Israel as Gila, once served in the IDF as a civil aviation pilot in the search and rescue unit.
She at first thought about going into the American Air Force to train on fighter jets, but she always felt that if she was going to learn a skill like that, she wanted to learn from the best.
Then in 2009, she was arrested. Rosenberg was involved in a lottery phone scam targeting the elderly after reportedly running out of money. The 31-year-old consented to extradition and served around 3 years in a U.S. prison, according to her lawyer, Yahel Ben-Oved. It is reported that she, along with 11 others, stole up to $25 million. Reuters asked Rosenberg about her conviction, but she declined to comment, saying, "Sorry, you'll have to go through the chain of command in YPG." Reports say she is estranged from both her parents, but her father speaks of Rosenberg and describes her preparedness for action.
She's known, I think, for always carrying around a backpack. And I've asked her why she carries around such a full backpack, and she says, in case something happens.
In an interview with Israel Radio, Rosenberg says she contacted the Kurdish People's Protection Unit, or YPG, on Facebook. She then met her contacts on the ground in Iraq, where they drove her across the border to Syria. She's now a fighter for YPG, only 3,000 meters from ISIS terrorists. This isn't the first time we've seen social media play a part in the recruitment of soldiers battling ISIS. In late October, former U.S. soldier Jordan Mattson said he, too, used Facebook to contact the Kurdish militia about joining the fight.
I got in contact with the YPG on Facebook, and I prayed about it for probably a month or two, and just really soul searched and said, is this what I want to do? And eventually, decided to do it.
Mattson says he also used the internet and social media to recruit other soldiers from around the world.
I've had ex-military come from ask from Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Canada, the United States, Australia, you name it, they've been asking. ISIS has threatened all of these countries that I've named to push their agenda in those nations, and the veterans of those nations who love their countries don't want to sit by while this is happening.
On Mattson's Facebook page, he refers anyone interested in volunteering to the Lions of Rojava Facebook page, naming it the official page of YPG. It is unclear if Rosenberg used that site, but it seems YPG, much like ISIS, has used social media to recruit foreign fighters. IBA News spoke with a good friend of Rosenberg that said that he had seen her just 2 weeks ago in Tel Aviv. He said he definitely sensed that she gets an adrenaline rush from action, that she was very ideological and strongly believed that ISIS had to be defeated. Yet she never let on her intent to join YPG. Alexandra Jen for IBA News.
The old Kishle police station in the Old City has taken on new meaning with the discovery of archaeological treasures spanning 2,700 years. Located next to the Tower of David Museum, it's likely to become the next tourist attraction. IBA's Ari O'Sullivan was there and filed this report.
Almost 70 years ago, the teenager Shmuel Matzah joined the Irgun Jewish Underground. British soldiers arrested him and brought him here to the old Ottoman-era police station known as the Kishle, adjacent to the Tower of David in Jerusalem's Old City. Today he recalls how, as a prisoner, he was going to teach those Brits a lesson and carved on the walls of his cell the symbol of the Irgun, a map of Greater Israel with a hand grasping a rifle and his name. It was a message, they couldn't break me, he says. His etchings were the first discoveries made by archaeologists of many layers of conquest, destruction, and building at the site stretching back to the 8th century BCE.
Step from Jaffa Gate. Jaffa Gate is the main gate to the old city of Jerusalem. Many people, tourists, come through this gate. Few meters from this step, you have this magnificent place. And in this place, apart is beauty, as the structure itself is very, very impressive. Inside you can see all the sequence, the historical sequence and the archaeological sequence of ancient Jerusalem, from the time of the first temple period till the time of the British Mandate. And I invite you to see this timeline, this travel in time.
The jail cells were neglected and abandoned until the Tower of David Museum stepped in. They hope to be able to use it as the site of their future rotating gallery.
And I hope that we meet again here 5 years from now and we can say that the dream come true and the Kishle will be our new gallery of rotating exhibition about Jerusalem.
The site along with the moat is opening to the public this week. And while it includes the foundation of Herod's palace and Hashmonean fortress, it also revealed dyeing pools from the Middle Ages run by Jews.
Amazing, because this is the moment which archaeology shake hands to the historical sources. And I remind you that in 1172, a Jewish traveler named Benjamin of Tudela came to Jerusalem of the Crusader period, and he mentioned that at the foot of the Crusader king's palace sat two Jewish and dyeing and paint clothes. This is the place.
From the Tower of David Museum, this is Ari O'Sullivan from IBA News.
Taking a look at local finance, and the shekel was mixed in foreign currency trading, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were down. Here's a look at the late afternoon numbers. no change in temperatures tomorrow. Here are the highs and lows for the next 24 hours. And that's all for this newscast. Please join us again tomorrow at the same time when Aaron Viner will be here with all the latest news from Israel. Until then, I'm Laura Cornfield, wishing you a great evening and shalom from Jerusalem.